Hey dorks. Sometimes companies launch new product lines that are technically flawed, but they sell well anyway. That certainly is the case with the Macintosh LC. The first iteration was a heavily cost-reduced Macintosh 2. The follow-up to that was a spec bump on paper, but in practice it wasn't any faster. But the prices were low, so the Mac LC line quickly became Apple's best-selling desktop computers, despite their enormous shortcomings. The next machine in the LC product line could probably sell well even if it was a modest upgrade from the last version. They proved as much with the LC2. When February of 1993 rolled around, it was time to reveal the next batch of new Apple machines. At Macworld Expo in Tokyo, Apple announced the Color Classic and the Centris 610 alongside a new LC. This was Apple's biggest push yet in Japan, and the Color Classic is really what drove a newfound popularity for Macs in Japan, which had been generally considered to be expensive toys there up to that point. I've already talked at length about the Color Classic though. Let's take a closer look at that new LC. It's the Macintosh LC3, and from the outside it looks pretty much the same as the LC2 with the same pizza box case. A 25 MHz 68030 this time instead of the 16 MHz part looks pretty nice too. But a closer look at the specs reveals that this might not just be a modest spec bump. It has a 72-pin SIM socket that can hold a 32 meg RAM SIM. Pair that with the 4 megs on board and you've got a maximum of 36 megs of memory. And the data bus the CPU uses to talk to the RAM and the rest of the machine is a full 32-bit bus, and it runs at the same speed as the CPU. This is starting to look really good. The logic board also has a socket to add a 68882 floating point unit if you're interested in using any scientific software, which is a plus since these machines were heavily marketed to education. The LC2 did have the pads and traces for a socket, but Apple never populated it. I added one to my LC2 though. You can check out how I did it in my LC2 video if you want. It's no secret that the LC and the LC2 were pretty crummy when they launched, and succeeded because the prices were low. Now that it looks like they built a very capable successor to them, were they able to keep those prices low? Surprisingly, yes, with the base model 4 megs of RAM and 80 meg hard drive version starting at $1,300. The one I've got here comes from my friend Garth Beagle. He's got a great collection of old Macs, and he's going for the Guinness Book of World Records title of most copies of Combat for the Atari 2600 in the world. Check out his YouTube channel, and if you're feeling generous, donate a Combat card or two to his efforts. A link is in the description. The outside of this case looks awesome. No yellowing at all, and it's not cracked or scratched in any serious way. I've always loved the way these pizza box systems looked. Looking inside, and it looks like it was recapped at some point with tantalum capacitors, and thankfully the battery's been removed. The power connector has some tape on it, so maybe something's wonky with this power supply. Hey, this came with the BlueSCSI V1. I haven't used one of these in a while. A 16 meg SIM too. That'll bring this to 20 megs total. So about the capacitors. Over the years, electrolytic capacitors go bad and end up leaking their electrolyte onto boards, and this can damage components and traces. Pretty much everything from this era that used surface mount electrolytic caps needs to have them replaced. In the retro Mac community, it's very common to replace these with tantalum capacitors because they don't have the potential of leaking in the future. This is perfectly fine. You just have to be careful to not put any of them on backwards. When an electrolytic capacitor fails, it can pop and leak electrolyte out. When a tantalum capacitor fails, it can explode into a shower of sparks and then short the two pads to one another, which can damage the board and other components. A few years ago, it was discovered by hobbyists that Apple seems to have made a mistake with one of the capacitors on the LC3 logic board, specifically C22 in the lower corner here. It's a capacitor for the negative 5 volt power rail, but the original caps installed for this rail have the negative end of the cap going to ground and the positive going to the negative 5 volts. Every Mac before and every Mac since with the negative 5 volt rail has had the cap the other way around, with negative on the voltage and positive on ground. Some will say the proper way to do this is with hot air, but personally I've found those old boards to have a tendency to lose their pads when using hot air. Like the glue that holds the pads down fails under prolonged heat, so I'm going to use an iron and some tweezers to pull it up. Putting a new one on opposite of what the silkscreen on the board tells me feels weird. Life is weird. Whoa, there's a bodge wire back here. Looks like it goes from the internal SCSI port to the external one. I'm also going to pop this battery holder off and put on a CR2032 holder. A CR2032 battery can still leak, but it's far less likely, and besides, these batteries are way cheaper and more common. You don't really need a battery at all, but they hold some settings like color depth, mouse speed, and such, which can be nice not to have to set every time. There we go. I don't trust this sketchy looking power supply with its taped up connector, so I'm going to use a Pico PSU based replacement from Ron's computer videos. I'll put a link in the description for where you can get one at the Joe's Computer Museum store. The one I have is a pre-release test version that Ron sent me, so I got to build everything from scratch. The one you can get from Joe, everything's put together. I'm soldering together a power switch for it right here. This is the 3D printed bracket I designed for it, and it's what comes with the one you get from Joe. I scavenged this cable from an old dead power supply. The kit from Joe comes with one. Let's plug it into the board and see if it works. Well, it chimes, so I'm satisfied. Now I'm going to replace the old BlueSCSI with a more modern one. I recently had PCBWay spin up a new batch of them for me. It's as easy as going to the BlueSCSI GitHub, downloading the Gerbers, and uploading them to PCBWay. They'll assemble the boards and ship them to you quickly at a fraction of the cost of buying them retail. Right now, PCBWay is celebrating their 12th anniversary with discount coupons and a few mini games where you can get even more discounts. The 12th anniversary celebration ends at the end of July, so make sure you check it out before then. PCBWay doesn't just do PCBs either. They've also got services for 3D printing, injection molding, sheet metal fabrication, and CNC machining. If you got a project to build, they probably got some way they can help. And if you want to share your project with the community, they got a great platform for that too. I highly recommend giving PCBWay a try. Let's get this plugged into a monitor and see what we're working with here. Nice, System 7.1, my favorite of all the classic macOS releases. Oh, there's stuff on here.
Everything is going extremely well.
Thanks, Hal. Here's an old program Garth wrote in the 90s for teachers. Let's do a hardware test with Snooper to make sure everything's okay in here. Looks good, but there's one more stress test to really put this machine through its paces.
Hello, what do you want?
What the hell is moof? Oh. Prince of Persia for cheaters? Oh, neat. Too bad it doesn't make me good at the game. Invisible clock?
It's Monday, about 6:45.
I don't know what I expected, but that makes sense.
Chicken. Woohoo! Boring.
Super glue my butt!
Organized crime.
You tell him, Homer. This feels a lot better than the LC2. Very snappy. But to be sure, let's run a speedometer benchmark. So I don't have my benchmark results for the LC2 saved anymore, and I've long since given away that nugget. I'm going to have to compare it to the Color Classic, which is basically an LC2 with a built-in monitor. Ignoring the disk score because the benchmark is a little weird with a BlueSCSI, we're looking at almost twice as fast. Way more than a modest upgrade. The numbers here are nearly identical to the 2CI, which is pretty impressive. Of course, there's no new bus slots here, so it doesn't have expandability of a 2CI, but for $1,300 it nearly matches that legendary system that was still selling for double that at the time. Now, comparing it to a 68040 based system like the Quadra 650, it doesn't match up. But this is a family computer for $1,300, not a business computer for $2,800, so it gets some slack from me. Very respectable for a 1993 low-cost home computer. Let's test out the serial port by hooking up a MIDI interface and checking Cozy MIDI from 1-Bit Fever Dreams. The serial ports are one of the only pieces of the Mac that use -5 volts, so this will let us know if turning that cap around was okay. So this machine is plenty good for me, but I'd like to do stupid stuff with old computers. So let's get stupid. In October of '93, Apple came out with the LC3 Plus, which was the same exact machine with a 33 MHz CPU instead of the 25 MHz one this one came with. The logic board is exactly the same, aside from one resistor moved to a different pad to select the CPU speed. I'm going to move that resistor myself to see how much nicer 33 is than 25. Pretty much every 25 MHz 68030 will run fine at 33, no problem. Removing it went okay, but I guess I squeezed the resistor too hard with my tweezers and it pinged off into the netherworld, so I guess I'll just use an offcut to bridge the necessary pads. It was a 0 ohm resistor anyway, so no biggie. Well, it's booting. That's a good sign. Benchmark time. That's quite the increase. Definitely faster than a 2CI now. But let's get stupider. I recently got a new old stock flatbed SCSI scanner I want to see if I can get working on here. I have a very limited amount of space here, so yeah. This scanner requires UMAX VistaScan 3.5 or later, which requires macOS 8.1. 8.1 can't normally install on this thing, but using a combination of an extension called Wish I Were and some ResEdit hackery, we can make it work. I'm also going to give this thing its best chance of success by sticking a larger SIM in here, so I've got the maximum of 36 megs of RAM now. Using Wish I Were, I trick the machine into thinking it's a Quadra 700, and then I run the OS 8 installer. When that's done, I've got to use ResEdit on the new 8.0 system file to get it to boot. There we go. macOS 8 on an LC feels weird. Let's update it to 8.1. Got it. Let's install VistaScan. Oh, won't install without a PowerPC CPU. Bummer. But I have an even stupider idea. I've been badgering Eric Helgeson for a year to add virtual scanner support to the BlueSCSI, and he finally relented. Basically, you create a folder called SC on your SD card with a number for the SCSI ID. I'm going to use ID 2, so it's SC2. You copy a TIFF file into that folder, and then put the SD card back into your BlueSCSI and boot up. macOS 8 was a bit slow on this thing, understandably, so let's go back to System 7 and try some virtual scanning. I can't believe that worked. Thanks, Eric, for adding this little joke to the BlueSCSI firmware. Maybe it'll be useful for something down the road. So where does this leave us? The LC3 is so far from crummy, I feel like it doesn't even really belong on this channel. What a redemption for Apple after the terrible LC 1 and 2. The LC series continued to be great with the 475 and then the large all-in-ones that followed. Any of them are great machines to add to your collections. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to get ad-free early access to my videos, consider joining my Patreon. It's only $3, and I post behind-the-scenes stuff there from time to time, and all the music I make for the videos is up there if you're so inclined. If you'd like to see me do more stupid stuff with computers, stay tuned.